If you want to try wildlife photography or videography for the very first time, but you don't know what gear you should get, this video is for you. I'll cover one budget setup, a mid-range setup, and a higher end setup, all with examples from the bush of Africa. I've used all of these setups myself, and they're all fairly lightweight, as is very important to me. But let's dive into the budget setup, which is a Panasonic GH5 and a Panasonic 100-400 f4.0 to 6.3 lens. That is the equivalent of 2 to 800 millimeter on a full frame. So it's very versatile. It gives you a lot of range. That's the lens, that's the setup I used in Africa in 2019 when I was photographing lions there for 6 months in the bush. If you haven't seen that series, there's a link appearing here so you can follow along this vlog from what I did there. On the plus side with this package, you have great range at the equivalent of 200 to 800 millimeter. That's fantastic. It's also very light and very versatile, as you can quickly go into video shooting mode, and the GH5 shoots fantastic video. I make stock footage, so that's very important to me. Shooting handheld, even at 400 millimeter, is very stable. Panasonics have great IBIS. It's also very affordable. I think you can get this package at around $2,500. Yeah, nobody said wildlife photography and videography was cheap, but for the amount of creative punch this packs, it's a great package. It is a great package, and the reach you have, fantastic. On the minus side of this package, it does not perform as well in low light situations, especially for photography. So you're depending on really good light to get the best out of it. When you shoot at the longer focal lengths, you should double the shutter speed. So for example, I'm shooting at 400 or the 800 equivalent on the full frame. I should have a shutter speed of at least 1/1600 of a second. So when you bump up the ISO, the images get grainier. And that was very clear to me when I started editing the photos. Panasonic also does not have great autofocus. There's a link to all the gear I mentioned in this video down in the description, so you can check that out after. All right, moving on. Why did I use this budget package when I had 6 months in the Botswana bush? It's very simple. I couldn't afford anything else, even though I wanted a big full frame lens to look like a pro when I was going for 6 months by myself. But I had to spend the rest of the budget on this car that broke down all the time. So, hence this budget option. But I think I proved that you don't need super fancy gear to get great results. Besides, if you're stuck at home because you spent all your money on super fancy gear, what's the point? Adventure over gear always. Let me know what you think of that statement down in the comments. And now let's move over to the mid-range section. And before we do that, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and like this video. It helps me make more and better content for you here on the channel. Thank you so much to that. Okay, mid-range. In the mid-range section, we have the Fujifilm XT4 with the 100-400 Fujinon lens. That's a fantastic sensor. The Fujifilm has a 26.1 megapixel sensor and is an APS-C, meaning that lens is an 150 to 600 equivalent. So not quite the range you have from the budget setup, but still, this is a fantastic setup. I think the Fujifilm XT4 is one of my favorite cameras, and it's super easy to use. So on the plus side of this Fuji setup, you have the bigger sensor of 26.1 megapixels. You have great autofocus. It's much better than the Panasonic. And you have good reach at 100 to 600 millimeter, and it's fairly light. Another great thing about the XT4 is that you have a flick switch between photography and videography mode. And I got some fantastic photos and videos with this camera. When it comes to minuses, I'm not sure if I do have any minus for this. It's fairly cheap. It's cheapish, like it's not cheap. It's $3,600. So that's a $1,000 bump up from that GH5 pack, but it's a newer system. I think the images is much better from the Fuji, and that's about it. I said this is great bang for your bucks, and this is definitely a camera package that you can grow old with. So let's talk about that high-end package. It's ridiculous. It's the Sony A1, Sony's new flagship camera. Wow. Okay, I shot some real bangers with this one. I'm not gonna lie. I got some fantastic results. But it's also because I was out in the field and I had got much more experience with wildlife photography. But all this new technology that comes in this Sony A1 package also, of course, helped. And the Sony is paired with this lens. It's the 100-400 G Master lens, OSS, optical stabilization, whatever. Great lens, fantastic. This combination is a killer. Whoa, hands down. But seriously, I'd expect nothing less considering the price tag of this combo, which is nearly $10,000. Yes, $10,000. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I switched to Sony cameras before this last trip to Africa because I wanted to create with absolutely no limits. And I thought I had the idea that I would create a lot of 8K time lapses and film a lot in 8K for my stock video portfolio. And that didn't happen so much. But I did get some awesome portraits of lions for my lions photo project that I was there to finish what I started back in 2009. On the plus side of this ridiculously expensive setup, the Sony A1 and a 100-400mm G Master lens is that it's light-ish. It's at least much lighter than those huge fixed super fast tele zoom lenses that you see people lugging around sometime out there in the bush. Those enthusiasts with too much money. Anyway, the autofocus, that's really impressive. That's also fantastic. It sticks to the eye autofocus, when you focus on, let's say, a lion that I was doing quite a lot, and it sticks to the eye, boom, you get a picture. It's super sharp. It's also very good to use with the app called Imaging Edge. Yes, I think that's what it's called. It's very responsive, so I could shoot some low downers with this iFootage monopod setup that I use quite a lot to get a more interesting angle to my portraits when I couldn't get out of the car. So that was also really cool to see. I think full frames generally do better in low light and handle higher ISOs better. So a huge win for the Sony in terms of performance, optical performance, yeah, maybe. I think just that autofocus when you're photographing wildlife is something, yeah, they've done a great job there. On the minus side for this Sony setup, it is ridiculously expensive at nearly $10,000 for the lens and the camera itself. And then maybe you want memory cards that are also quite expensive. That fills up easily as well, considering the lens on this thing is 50 megapixels. There's also no flippy screen, and I'm thinking, why? Why don't they use the flippy screen? Why don't they have the flippy screen? There are some situations I did in Africa where I was laying under the car to get portraits, low down portraits of different animals, and it would have made it so much easier for me if I could have that flip out screen to just bump down on the ground and actually see what was going on, because I couldn't press my eye into the viewfinder. So that would have been very helpful. Also with the Sony cameras, I've noticed I don't like the way they handle right out of the box. I think they're just too small for my hands. Not that I have huge hands or anything. They're just very small. So I had to get a small rig cage for the Sony. Then it handles perfectly. It also protects the camera. So that's another thing you have to, or you should probably get if you're buying a ridiculously expensive camera like the Sony A1, that cage to protect it and to give it better handling. Also, there are connection points with threads. You can stick all kinds of stuff on there. Let's conclude this video with some recommendations and what I think you should go for. If you have the money, definitely go for the Fujifilm XT4 package with that 100-400mm lens. It is taking great photos and great video, and it's so much easier to flick between video and photography mode on that flick switch you have on top of the camera. It's a great package, period. And if that's too expensive, the GH5 is also a great choice. It's lighter, it's older, so you can get it at a much better price secondhand. Maybe you can get a new one as well. If you're really lucky, a new secondhand camera, that would be fantastic. But yeah, I got some super results with that in 2019 because it was the camera I had. I had nothing else, I couldn't afford anything else. So I made the most of what gear I had. It's always better to spend your money on adventure and then gear, not the other way around. If you want the best of the best, the Sony A1 with a 100 to 400 G master lens is what you should get. It gives you everything you need and more. If you really want to do those 8K time lapses, film 8K and take stellar images, Sony A1, 400 G master lens, fantastic option. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep mine simply because I didn't do as much 8K time-lapse and 8K filming for my stock video portfolio as I thought. So I don't know if I can justify keeping such an expensive setup. That I don't think that makes sense to me. So we shall see. I use it all the time, but yeah, I don't do much 8K video or 8K time-lapse or that sort of stuff anymore. But I'm waffling. Let's move on. On the waffle note, please do subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. Leave a like on this video. That really helps. It helps support what I do and make these sort of videos, go on adventures and show you guys what I use, how I do things and all that good stuff. So remember again, it is much more important to go on these adventures and get cool experiences in life than have the latest and greatest gear if you can't afford it. Yeah, that sums it up quite nicely. If you have nothing else, use your phone. Links to all the gear is in the description. I made like a package thing on kit.com, I think it's called. It's down there, you can check it out if you want to have a look at these cameras and get all the specs from the Amazon page. These are all affiliate links as well, by the way, so I get a small commission if you purchase anything from them at no extra cost to you. Okay, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next. Bye bye.